You're listening to the Tamar Yana Show here at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and we are live if you're listening to us on Sunday, the 8th of December, between 4 to 5 p.m. Holy Time right here in the land of Israel, or if it's between 9 to 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, that means that we are live and you can call into the show and make a comment or ask a question on what we're talking about. Today, Syria has fallen. Is Jordan next? Hear all about it. We're going to get an Arab's view and take on this dramatic and sudden development in the Middle East. First, I want to say hi to everybody who's listening in. Wow, from all over the world, from all over the United States, Australia, Israel, Canada, the United Kingdom, South Africa, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Thailand, Italy, Germany, etc., etc. It's great to see you all here. And our guest today is none other than Mudar Zahran. He is a Jordanian Arab and the head of Jordan's opposition coalition. He is a frequently published writer, and he's a former officer for the U.S. Department of State through their embassy in Amman, Jordan. And you can follow him on Twitter at Mudar_Zahran, and we will put a link to that on the page where this show is podcasted. I want to say hello to Mudar Zahran.
Hello, Tamar.
Good to have you on. You're talking to us not from Jordan. You're somewhere in Europe, I understand. Is that correct?
Well, I returned from Israel just exactly 6 days ago. Now I'm in London.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about what everybody's talking about. And that is in less than 2 weeks, the Assad regime in Syria has fallen. And a lot of us are asking the questions. We're scratching our heads. How could this have happened in less than 2 weeks? We're talking about a country that had an air force or has an air force, tank battalions, etc. And these rebels were able to topple everything and take Damascus as of last night. Tell us how this could happen.
What happened is, I'll be honest with you, it was not unexpected. For those in the know, for those connected to what happens behind closed doors, we heard wind of it before it happened. So for the higher-ups, it was never a surprise. It's just simple. It's any situation in the Middle East, especially in this highly tense and highly complicated region with a lot of interest for the higher-ups or the superpowers, any situation, any status quo is usually supported by someone keeping it in place. Assad was definitely compromised by the Russians. The Iranians could no longer help him. Hezbollah, which was the most effective militia working for him, was almost annihilated by the Israelis. And, they were neutralized with this so-called ceasefire. And they couldn't help him. No one came to his rescue. Assad knew, I have information, I would say, from my sources of a deal he has agreed to prior, like around 4 days ago. So it was all arranged. If we wish, what's more complicated is not how it's happened, Tamar. That's it. It was very simple. First of all, no one can deny the Syrian people have put a formidable fight against Assad, regardless of the terror and the Islamist groups involved, and there are plenty. But all in all, the Syrian people have stood their grounds, and this is very impressive. At the same time, Assad was, his soldiers were simply evacuating buildings, and the other guys moved in. As simple as that.
But I have to ask you, they have an air force. I don't remember seeing one report where they sent out jets against the enemy, where they sent out tanks in a battalion against the enemy.
It was a evacuation, a well-controlled and even examined evacuation based on what seems to be an agreement and also the gap quickly filled by the effective forces. And this is something we're going to discuss now about the fact that we have plenty of radical terrorists within the groups as well as normal ones, but we need to know what's going to happen next in Syria.
Right. So I was going to ask you who the players are. Maybe you can tell our listeners who the players are in this.
Okay, let me first of all explain to you that what happened is not going to stop with Assad. What happened is a tsunami, and there are other names on the list. In other words, anyone connected to Iran, anyone in the former Iranian apparatus. There was an Iranian apparatus who was installed in the region by George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. Those people believe that we should empower Iran to neutralize the Arab Muslim Sunni majority and at the same time keep Israel under control. So, and it's worked for the past, since 2003, since the occupation of Iraq, and I'm not going to waste your listeners' time with history. Bush put Iraq, a treasure trove, on a golden platter and gave it to the Iranians. Iranians and empowered Hezbollah, tolerated Assad, and so forth. So Iranian had quite an impressive secret empire stretching from the so-called Persian Gulf to Iraq, to Syria, to Lebanon. And lately, over the past 10 years, they've extended their influence to Jordan and Egypt, and eventually part of Libya and Algeria. So this is, and Yemen and United Arab Emirates. They are best friends with the United Arab Emirates. So this empire is being destructed. And first, it's before the big hit on Iran. You need to chop Iran's arms. And this started now with Syria. To put it in a nutshell, what happened? Iran getting kicked out of Syria is always a good piece of news. It's a good thing. But we need to know who's on the ground right now, who we're dealing with.
Right.
One, the strongest people are the Julani, a gentleman by the name of Julani, or like Gulani, if you attribute him to the Golan Heights. Muhammad al-Julani is basically a radical terrorist. And Jabhat al-Nusra is just one notch better than Al-Qaeda, so it's 5% less poison than the 100% Al-Qaeda. So we're dealing with terrorists. We're dealing with people who wanted, not all Syrians, but I'm talking who we're dealing with in this case. We have the terrorist faction, which is the strongest faction, radical faction. They control the following region. They control a part of the north. The Kurds control a part. It's not big. It's okay, but it's not big. And the bigger part is with the Jabhat al-Nusra, and those are supported by Turkey. With the other Islamist faction, and they control now Homs, which is basically the belly of Syria. Homs is the largest county or governorate in Syria. They control it. So that's Islamist. We have the less radical, or actually the rather moderate Liberation Army, which is scattered all over the place. They control several areas. And usually we're talking the east center. And we have Dira, which is borders the Jordanian borders. They have both Islamist and the Free Syrian Army controlling it. And Damascus, the Jabhat al-Nusra and the Free Syrian Army is very diminished there. So it's the Islamists controlling Damascus. And we have the Alawite region, which is Latakia and those the mountains, basically. The Alawite minority now is at quite a predicament because, they have done a good job killing Sunnis. So we're talking about, and then we have the most, the softest target in this case is Quneitra. Quneitra, I was in the Golan Heights exactly 8 days ago, a day before I traveled. And we went, ironically, we were looking with my hosts. We were overlooking. We went into an area called Quneitra, which was, a part of Syria, which Israel managed to annex. And Opposite to it, we saw the Syrian part, which is that part is very fragile. I cannot, spoil Israeli army operations, but all I can say is I know exactly that there is something happening right now down there, and I can't go into details, but Israel cannot risk having Islamists on its borders, and therefore the oldest trick in the book is to expand your line of defense. So before we have another war with Syria with the Islamists, Israel is actually moving forward to advance the borderline a little bit for a buffer zone.
Right. I just want to confirm what you're saying, that the IDF is closing the regions near the Syrian border following the fall of the Assad regime. They're going to make sure that no enemies are going to be filling that vacuum there. And so go ahead.
Okay, and also there's a lesson. Those people, what's keeping them in check when it comes to the Israeli borders is they know that, first of all, they all, at each other's throats. And it wouldn't be an advantage for either one of them to be hit by Israel. So even at the darkest hours, none of them, even ISIS became close to the Israeli borders and never hit them. So I do not expect that they will be dumb enough to hit Israel. But again, what happened with the 7th of October, you never know. You never know. Is it dangerous for Israel? Yes, but I don't think it's ever been safe to Israel in this region since, this whole thing has started, especially, with the Arab Spring. And at the same time, there's a very good accomplishment here, an A-plus achievement, which is getting rid of Iran and Syria.
Right. So let me just tell our listeners that this definitely has weakened Iran because they put a lot of money into Syria with its bases, with the Hezbollah. And by the way, reports are saying that convoys of Hezbollah have fled Syria back into Lebanon. And this is going to, again, weaken Iran very much. But I'd like to ask you on the other side, Mudar, if I can, the country that is backing these or supporting these, I'll just call them rebels for the sake of ease, but it is Turkey. Now, I'd like to ask you your opinion on why and what interest and what agenda Turkey has in the overthrow of the Assad regime.
Well, they're not all supported by Turkey, and they're not all terrorists. But we've learned in the experience with your Palestinian neighbors, in the Nashtachim and in Gaza, that it's enough to have some of them, even if a small group, even if we assume they're small, a small group of terrorists is enough to ruin it for everyone. So, no, they're not all terrorists, but it's a very dangerous situation. Turkey supports only Jabhat al-Nusra and a few small other factions. Turkey has two interests. One, to play in the region. Turkey has geographic or dominion interests in Syria. And Turkey has a history of, what happened in Cyprus, so it wouldn't mind doing the same in Syria. And it thinks of it as Turkish land, occupied Turkish soil. That's what they exactly think of it. In addition, the Turks have the Kurds next to them. So if they leave the area and let the Kurds be, it's going to become, in their opinion, a threat to them. Also, with the government of Erdogan, there's no question. The government of Erdogan, it belongs openly to the apparatus, to the globalist apparatus. And I want to mention something which is the best kept secret in the region. China is a key player. People underestimate China. China is never brought up. When you talk to the average American or Israeli and tell them what's the threat to America or Israel, they quickly move into robotic mode, telling you how Islam is very dangerous and, Islamist radicals. Yeah, that's absolutely. Radical Islamists are a big threat. But the real threat, the enemy with the teeth, fangs, nails, money to burn, countless human resources, and incredible technology is China. China, to make it short, China controls Iran fully controls Iran. And we can go into that. We need a few hours to talk about that. And China controls Iraq and Syria until yesterday, and has a grip on the King of Jordan and an incredible grip on Sisi. So this is a very powerful, and also Hezbollah. So this is a very powerful actor, and this is an actor there has been a doctrine in Washington. It's George Bush Sr.'s doctrine, and you can tell I have a lot of love for the Bush family. The George Bush Sr. doctrine was empowering China at the expense of the United States, and Bush Jr.'s doctrine was bringing China to the Middle East, which he has. So this was a proxy hit to China. Many people don't even have China in mind when it comes to this. No, this was, the Chinese are crying before they go to sleep. It's soon they're going to lose their biggest source of income in the region, which is Iraq. Iraq is a treasure, and they're going to lose it soon. So how is this going to transpire, and what does it mean for Israel? If we may address that, Tamar. One, it's not going to stop with Assad. There are other names on the list. The person most scared at the moment is the King of Jordan, to the point where what the Wall Street Journal reported, I can authoritatively confirm is true. When they reported 2 nights ago that the King of Jordan called Assad and told him to establish a government in exile, because he's not letting go. He wants his partner in crime to still be in power. This came also with a lot of hits that has been directed at China and her friends in the region. The biggest hit is with Hamas. Most people do not understand how important Hamas was. They think it's just a group of maniacs ruling some hick town. No, they're not. And people, you can't say half-truth. You have to see the full picture. You there, Tamar?
I am with you.
Hamas, okay, why Israel is such a very problematic country? Why can't you have peace in Israel? Why not in the past 3,000 years? Because you are exactly at the gateway connecting
3 continents.
Africa, 3 continents.
Yes.
The middle of everywhere. So you
Europe,
are a gateway.
Asia, Africa.
Everybody wants to control. And Gaza is exactly the spot it's like the hook, the joint. That's why artificially they pushed Sharon out of Gaza. And I won't even go why, because many people, my friends in the Knesset, my friends in the Israeli government, okay, not this one, but other ones, they've told me how they were shocked when Sharon withdrew from Gaza. He withdrew in a nutshell. He was forced to withdraw. He was threatened to withdraw. I'm not going to go into why. And then they single-handedly, the Western, I repeat, Western intelligence agency single-handedly put Hamas in Gaza to make sure that there will never be peace in that region, and there will never be peace in the point of gravity of the world. The point of gravity in the world is the Levant. Israel, Jordan / Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. This is the point of gravity, strategic point of gravity. If this place is not stable, nobody will be stable. If Jerusalem is not stable, this is not, biblical or Talmudic. If Jerusalem is not safe, stable, and happy, the world will not be. And this has nothing to do about religion from a strategic point of view. So these people and the ability of China to play the way they want was unlimited. And what we see now, yesterday, was a very huge blow to China and her friends some of her friends left in Washington.
All right. What is the grip that you said that China has on Jordan and Egypt?
Okay, the grip in Jordan is, for some reason, the king of Jordan, even in his own memoir, is open about his connection to Iran. In his own memoir, he has a photo of him sitting with the Ayatollah, and he comments underneath that After 2003 war, we all knew that Iran would have an important role. So he's not shy about his connection to Iran. Himself, and his top advisor, Ayman Safadi, a Druze, by the way, a Druze whose cousins are in the IDF, just side note. Ayman Safadi, Jordanian deputy prime minister, travels often to Iran. Even when Arab countries would not talk to Iran, the King of Jordan talks to them. Not long story. There's documented evidence, beyond argument of their connections. He is with Iran, and Iran is China. The Iranians, they have two bases in. The Chinese have two bases in Iran. The Chinese are the ones, they have a defense agreement with Iran. They're the ones keeping Iran afloat, and he opened the doorway for China. And usually it's the typical Chinese method. I'm not saying China's evil. Chinese are very smart people. The Chinese rulers are very smart, and they're doing what's in their own interest. They gave him a loan for some nonsense, gas generating unit, which he doesn't need, because Israel gives him the gas on, gas, not gas as in American gas. They give him gas for discounted prices, so he doesn't need it. Ended up, costing him a debt to China of $8.5 billion and paying an incredible sum every year to pay it back to the Chinese. This is the exact Chinese method. When they want to go into a country, they give it a loan and they control it after that. So, and there's even more than that. Worse is, Egypt. The Chinese grip in Egypt is way much higher. First of all, President Sisi, he openly, in a Muslim country, people take communism with a huge, huge discomfort because, they think of it as atheist, anti-Islam, anti-God. He openly congratulates China at every occasion, including sending open, congratulatory letters to the Chinese for the anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese, there's the Silk Road, which passes through Syria and passes through the region, and depends. People need to look at the map. Google Road and Belt Initiative by the Chinese. They're securing their Silk Road and their trade, and a huge part of it is the Suez Canal, which the Suez Canal with Sisi has been trying to sell it to someone lately. He took incredible loans from them. His own advisor admitted in television that when they became bankrupt, the Chinese threw in a huge amount of billions. And ironically, Jordan signed just 9 months ago, signed an agreement with the Chinese to be, quote unquote, a part of the Silk Road initiative, even though the Silk Road doesn't pass through Jordan. So no, China is stronger than you think. And let me add a note here, because we're all trying to learn something new here, okay, and we're all trying to pick each other's brain. It's a mutual knowledge is collective. Every globalist media outlet has been heavily focusing on Islam since 9/11. Rightfully so or not rightfully so, they never even mentioned the word China. And at that time, I can assure you, China thrived big time. So where do we stand today? The situation is better because on aerial view, bird eyes view, the evil forces are getting kicked out one by one. But for the momentary situation, we are looking at a tense situation. And I'm not sure if this is even the right term anymore, but I'm going to say it. The fat lady has to sing yet in Syria. It's going to take a few years. When I came in the show a few months ago, I said, Hezbollah, it's a 2-year deal. It's going to be 2 years till we kill Hezbollah by making it bleed to death. Right now, Syria is going to go under 4 years of unrest. It's going to be a government without a government. There are some names trying to market themselves.
Why do you give a specific timeline of 4 years? For 4 years, Syria is going to be in turmoil. Why do you say 4 years?
I didn't say turmoil. It's going to be not clear, a government without a government, pretty much like Iraq. There is a government on paper, but in reality, everyone controls his own region. That's what we're going to get in Syria in 4 years because I've heard it from my sources. I'm not predicting it on my own.
Uh-huh. Okay, so this is what your
So,
sources are saying. All right.
yeah, the same sources who, said Hezbollah it's going to take 2 more years.
So if they're already predicting a timeline of 4 years, they must have some goal that they already know about, and they're figuring it's going to take around 4 years to be able to achieve it. Do you know what that goal is?
Absolutely. And I'm not at full liberty to speak about it, but I can assure you that the whole region is going to change.
For the good or for the bad? You're saying for the good.
For the absolute better.
Mm-hmm.
Before Trump leaves, the whole region will be in a much better situation. Trump is a very smart man. I support him. My relatives, Muslims and Arabs, voted for him in the United States, but at the same time, Trump follows a larger scheme of things with the good forces in the establishment in America, Jerusalem, and London. Things have changed.
Okay. Let me bring another... Let me bring another idea here, because this morning, watching the news and hearing the talking heads, a lot of them are saying, I shouldn't say a lot, but some were saying that it's very unstable now in the sense that with Assad, you knew what you were getting. He was pretty much predictable. With these new rebels that are much more Islamic fanatics, like ISIS, etc., they're very unstable. You don't know what they're going to do, and they're insane in a way, and it makes for the region being much more dangerous. So how would you weigh in on that?
Well, for an expert like myself, who's been inside the belly of the beast, I can tell an amateur when I see them talking about this matter. Whoever said that is an amateur because they don't know exactly what's at stake. So they pamper, they blow up, they inflate a common fear, which I have against those rebels. It's not like that. I'm not saying everything is dandy sweet, but they're saying that Assad is strange. Well, Assad was Iran. Iran was next to your borders. The only reason Israel has anything called peace, the only reason they have peace is because everyone is afraid of what they're going to do next if they hit them. If you provoke Israel right now, you will be hammered. That's the only reason Assad and Iran were quiet at their borders, and that's the only reasons we will not, and I repeat, we will not see any significant problems on Israel's border. We might see some, but nothing significant.
Okay. So I didn't quite understand when you were defining who these rebels were, and we know that Turkey is backing them, and we also know that Syria is not just Syrian people. There's many different ethnic groups in Syria. And so with the breaking away of this general government, now with these tribal entities on its own, where do you see all this going? And who, again, just to make it more definitive in our listeners' minds, who are you saying that these rebels are?
These rebels are a mix of Islamist terrorists, plus, to be fair, a good amount, at least half of them, as the Free Syrian Army, a non-Islamist group. The whole Syrian people stood against Assad, but at the same time, the Islamist radicals are half of those fighting. Exactly. The Islamic terrorists are half of those people with guns in Syria right now. But I conclude that they will not be able to pose any serious threat to Israel because they are divided. Yesterday we went to bed with Syria. There was a country on the map called Syria. Right now we have a country in the map called Syria which is divided between 5 different factions. And there's a 6th one that might arise in the central county called Homs. So we're talking six different factions in Syria. Those people, one of the best way they will keep themselves in check is the fact that they're afraid of one another.
And Turkey's involvement?
Turkey is involved in the north, and to an extent, but not a huge extent, to the east and south, but to a very minimal extent. But in the north, Turkey is absolutely there.
All right, so you're saying that Turkey wants to annex part of Syria because they were under the Ottoman Empire before World War One, and they want to see their empire back. And again, you're saying that's Turkey's interest in this?
Turkey, yeah, more than the empire. The empire is a rhetoric, claim they use, but to pump up the soldiers and the people with it, but to prep them up. But it's mostly strategic. Syria is a very rich country. Syria has oil, has a lot of other things. And they want to expand into it. And in addition, they want to corner the Kurds on the upper northern eastern side of Syria, which is they have their own region. So they don't want to roam and free. Turkey historically may never have good intentions in Syria. There's one big enemy defeated in Syria right now, which is Iran. That's a good thing. But then we have the little small enemies all over the place, which they can be controlled. Is it good? No, but it's better than yesterday.
How do you think this is going to affect Iran now? And what do you think is going to be their reaction to all of this?
The Iranians cannot do much anymore because they've done their best. They've done the three best things they can do. One, they've launched Hamas in a preemptive strike. And by the way, one of the reasons 7 October happened is because they knew that the biggest scheme of things, which I can't even identify what that is. I can't even tell people what that is. It's above my clearance of. But that is, they know it's coming and it's very dangerous for them. So they started by blowing that thing in the 7th of October and killing the people in southern Israel. And then they've done the Hezbollah. And then they've done threats by the Jordanian monarch, claiming that he's going to launch none of what happened on the Jordanian borders, 3 different incidents, were by coincidence in a country called like Jordan. And this is, fulfillment of the Ayatollah who said 9 years ago, quote unquote, we have the ability to install Iranian Revolutionary Guards on the border, Jordanian-Israeli borders. He said that. So they've pulled every trick in the book. They've sent missiles, and it's not working. Iran is in a very weak position. And what Iran doesn't know about their Chinese friend is that the Chinese are not stupid. The Chinese will not go to war for anybody. And once they no longer see a fiscal interest in the country, they will pull out. Iran is in a very bad position. It's going to be a while before Iran itself, the regime, is dismantled. But I want everyone to remember these words. When the Iranian regime falls, it will be quick, smooth, and lightning, just like what exactly happened in Syria yesterday. I see this in the foreseen future, not foreseen future, but in the not very far future. We still will be young people, you and I, when it happens.
So you're saying that Iran is going to be in this line of dominoes that's also going to fall. That's what you're saying, that the people are going to revolt.
Exactly. All the sources of evil. Let me be clear, and I'm going to say this again. Once you understand, when anyone understands why something's being done, it becomes easier once you understand the motive, everything becomes easier. The motive is to stop Chinese dominance as China is about to swallow the West, literally swallow the West. Chinese have been, you have to give them the credit. The leaders of China are incredibly patient and incredibly smart. That said, U.S. and the West, they know China is about to eat them alive, silently. So they want China out of the Middle East, and they are not ruling out the potential of a major war with China in the future, in the next 20 years. Therefore, they don't want nonsense around the world eating up their fiscal and military powers. Therefore, they want the Arab-Israeli conflict done, because it was always artificial. It was never true. Islam and Islamism have been used to fuel it, but it was always, it could have been ended some time ago. They kept it, and they kept unrest in other areas in the Middle East. And they want this done, which means, and I want people to remember these words. Hamas will be finished, annihilated. Now it's almost done, We're waiting just for the death certificate, that's all. Hezbollah will be annihilated. The Muslim Brotherhood of Jordan, which is the world's largest Muslim Brotherhood, which controls all other Muslim Brotherhood factions, the global HQ of the Muslim Brotherhood is in Jordan, and they are fully aligned with the government of Jordan, the King of Jordan, and I've said that several times. He said, quote unquote, they are part of my regime. He said that to the media. So basically, those three, plus the pro-Iran Iraqi government, plus some countries in the Persian Arab Gulf who are loyal to Iran. Those are all going to be done with over the next few years, and it's going to be done effectively. One thing you have to admit is true about what happened yesterday in Damascus. It was effective. No dead bodies, no destruction, no war, because it was managed. It was aided by the powers of the good to happen. This is why the terrorist, Muhammad Julari, the leader of Syria now, the leader of the Syrian Jabhat al-Nusra, Islamic Affairs, he's coming and saying that he regrets ever being close to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, because this is being well managed. And let me add something here. Everything that happened, and people would come, like, the average folks like you and I would come and say, why are those politicians so stupid? Why can't they see they are stupid? They're not stupid. They have access to more information than the average person. They have money. And in most cases in the United States, they went to schools better than anyone else has been to. They're smart. They know what they're doing. It was all controlled. It was all designed to be that way. Iraq was designed to be a mess. Hamas and Gaza was designed to be a mess. Oslo was designed to be a mess. The Palestinian Authority was designed to be what it is today. And so forth. The PLO, Arafat. This is not a conspiracy. These are facts. Those people have always done the mess created through chaos, and even literature of some of the previous decision makers in Washington and London, they were open about it. Create trouble and then control it. This is not happening. This is not... Hello?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, this is not happening anymore. The heyday are over for the troublemakers, and we're looking at the completely new region. And you need to keep an eye for these following countries: Jordan, Egypt, and Iraq. Those are the next domino effect areas.
Do you think that Jordan is going to be next to fall?
I can't comment about that, but all I can tell you is the King of Jordan is very, 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 very scared at the moment. He's terrified. He's mesmerized. And I, as the leader of the Jordanian opposition, there's close to 11 million Palestinians in Jordan. You might not like the term Palestinian, that's fine, but just 53 years ago, there was never a country called the United Arab Emirates, and 7 years ago, there was never a country called Qatar. So it's all bogus names in this region. But that said, as the leader of the Jordanians and the Palestinian majority of Jordan, the only game in town, I can assure you, you're going to hear more from us in the very foreseen future. And we are taking care of it to keep it peaceful and make sure that we will not end up with another radical or radicals in Jordan in the foreseen future.
Okay, is there anything else that you want to add before you go?
I would like to thank the Israeli people, and I want the people to listen to this in a nutshell. If you have a minute. I left Israel, I think 7 days ago. 7 days ago, I flew back from Israel. During that time, I traveled across the country. I had my own security detail, but I traveled across the country, and I've went to both Arab and Jewish towns. In Jewish towns, I deliberately meant to use Arabic words to tell my hosts at restaurants and elsewhere that they wanted to know that I am Arab. Not one time was I offended or mistreated. And I went to a lot of places like Nazareth, Zarazir, Daliat al-Carmel, where I sat at tables with both Arabs and Jews sitting at the same thing. When you get to the human level, you find out that hatred is not a natural human feeling. And I feel that good days are ahead. But to those listening who are not Jews or not Israelis or Israelis with doubts or Jews with doubts about Israel, I can tell you the country is wonderful. The average Israeli person is down to earth, not racist, not hateful. And I think to an extent, we Arabs have a lot to learn from Israel. And I would like to thank also Israeli people for hosting me in their country and welcoming me with open arms. Thank you.
All right. Mudar Zahran, thank you so much for coming on and giving us your take on what's going on right now. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tama, for having me. You have a good day and Laila Tov. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you. All right. And that was Mudar Zahran. And we still have a lot of questions that remain to be seen as time goes on. And questions like, with all the different ethnic groups in Syria that have different interests and also want independence and or even more than independence, in other words, they want to take power over the others as well. We know that Syria was notorious for holding and using chemical weapons. What happens when one of these rebel groups should seize and get these chemical weapons? What will happen? Also, what about the Druze? The Druze are a really special sect of people. They are, a lot of people would just say that they're Arabs, but they're not Arabs per se. They speak Arabic today, but they have a different culture, different religion. You have the Druze that live on the Syrian side. You have Druze that live on the Israeli side. Many of them are family members, and they've been caught or separated after, with the non-peace in Israel. And the Druze have a tendency to be loyal to whoever is over them. So we're going to see what's going to happen there now with these Druze families and what stance they're going to be taking. As well, Israel. What is Israel going to do? This morning, watching the reports, they were talking about how now Israel immediately needs to go in to the non-military zone that was separating Israel from Syria and take over security there to make sure that these rebels and or other enemies of Israel do not seep in, do not infiltrate in, and that we need to expand our boundaries and our borders now for defense reasons, and we need to do that immediately before, if it becomes a vacuum, other forces will be sucked in there and come against Israel. And again, let me remind you all that there are still chemical weapons that are waiting to be used, perhaps, in Syria, and we have to protect our population and our border towns as well. Also, what will happen after this? Will Jordan fall? Will Iraq? Iraq has pretty much fallen already, but who will go in and take power over that? Is Iran going to lose more power and influence? Obviously, it has with this blow, because their proxy, the Hezbollah, one of their proxies, the Hezbollah, has fled Syria, and it's in array right now. They left bases. There's a lot of money and infrastructure that Iran put into Syria, and now they've lost control over those areas. So what's going to happen? And if what Mudar Zahran said about Iran also basically imploding with a rebellion or a revolution, a people's revolution of their own, this could be a very good thing because the people of Iran are not the Islamic extremists that are sitting in government right now and are trying to make nuclear weapons to use against not just Israel, but the West as well. Remember, when they burn the Israeli flag and they scream death to Israel, right next to it, they are burning the American flag and screaming death to America. And they call Israel the little Satan, but they call America the big Satan. And they say first the Saturday people, the Jews, and then the Sunday people, the Christian world or the West. So a lot is in flux right now, and it remains to be seen who is going to take the initiative to ensure peace and security, not just in their own countries, and I'm talking about Israel especially, of course, but also in the region. Because there is an influence when someone sees a dictator like Assad that's been in power, him and his family, for at least 54 years, at least, and they fall, it emboldens forces that are against their current governments to take up arms and start attacking now as well. So we're going to see a lot of flux in the area and what could happen in the region. It's time will tell. Time will tell. I do think it is godly. I do. I'm sorry. I'm a religious Jewish woman. I see God's hand in this. That's a country like Syria that was a strong country and had an air force and tank corps and had Russian backing, that they should fall, and they didn't use, at least from what I saw or did not see, I haven't seen any Air Force attacks or armored corps going to fight, and they fell. So let's go to a caller. Hi, caller. What's your first name and where are you calling from?
This is Ron from Baltimore.
Hi, Ron.
Hi. And, it sounded to me that your guest was kind of biting his tongue to prevent from saying that a lot of the things that he thinks is going to happen fall right into line with what is Donald Trump's agenda for what would happen, because it sounded like what he was describing was a continuation and expansion of the Abraham Accords, slowly and truly overtaking, as it were, all the areas of the Middle East. And it sounded like he was almost hinting that the hidden hand behind a lot of these things is Donald Trump.
It's interesting that you're saying that, because they were talking also today that apparently there were some messages sent by Assad, by Bashar Assad to Israel, that, and possibly to the United States as well, that we should save him, and he will be very, very amenable. I'm forgetting my English, to making peace and or changing things in the region, being very, very flexible now in his thinking, and that did not happen. But I'm wondering, because we really don't know that much about these rebels, and when you're dealing with Islamic extremists and not just politicians or dictators that could be possibly bought off, right? Because they value money, they value power. But when you're talking about religious extremists, then sometimes there is no talking to them, that nothing is acceptable except for them to kill and do what they think that their God wants them to do. So knowing that, are you still very positive about what might happen?
Well, in the long term, yeah. Now, in the short term, as your guest said, all these factions in Syria are at each other's throats to a certain extent, and so that will prevent them perhaps from being as dangerous as they might otherwise be if they were united. So I think long term the prospects do look good, as he was saying.
Well, we can be cautiously optimistic, I guess, but it is, I was joking with some people that when this war was going on and before the fall of Damascus, etc., I was saying that I wish luck to both sides, that both sides should, I wish success to both sides. These are like two mafia groups fighting each other. It can only be good for the world. So thank you for your call, Ron. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, that's about it. It's hatzlacha to all of us, I guess.
Thank you very much. Hatzlacha, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know Hebrew, means success. Thank you, Ron, for your call. Appreciate it. Okay, and that was Ron calling in from the settlement of Baltimore. As you know, I always like to joke because people talk about Israel, the settlement of, or occupied territory, and so I kind of like switch it over to other countries so people can realize how ridiculous sounding it is, because of course the Jewish people, this is our homeland, this is where our history is, this is where our king served, Jerusalem was our capital, this place is called Judea. It was called Judea and Israel. Those are Jewish names, and this whole idea of a Palestinian people, where was there's a famous thing that was put out on the internet years ago. If Palestine was a country, who was their ruler before Israel was established? Who was their king? Who was their president? What was their money? Was there a Palestinian money? No, it was actually a British currency given out, and it said on there for Palestine, but Palestinian meant Jew in those days. And there was Hebrew on this. There was some Arabic too, but it was in English. So it was all false. It was all from an occupation from the West, from Britain after World War I, came in and took power. Lebanon was doled out to the colonial France. And a lot of the Lebanese speak French because the French were in charge of or occupying Lebanon, and the British occupying Israel, etc. So these are all, as I think Ron had said that, but also, of course, Mudar was saying the same thing, that these regions were divvied up and lines were drawn, and they were artificial lines, and this is why you have so many unhappy players in here, because there's so many different ethnic groups, and yet the Alawites and the Assad family took charge. So it's the Middle East is not such an easy place to draw lines on. It's more of a tribal culture, and this has to be respected. And it has to be dealt with wisely. And that's why a lot of people were telling Israel, listen, why are you trying to make peace treaties with countries or with a made-up Palestinian Authority? Because remember, before Oslo, there was no such thing as a Palestinian Authority. And we're talking about Oslo came in, I think it was in 1993, if I'm not mistaken. And there was no Palestinian Authority then. So they were saying that Israel should just go to each village and speak with their muhtar and make arrangements with them of what would make them happy to live as peaceful citizens, but to respect Israeli law and Israeli jurisdiction and to have peace. And you do it village by village or muhtar by muhtar, the head of the tribes, and stop with these false and fake entities that are being made, like the Palestinian Authority or like these other countries that were just fake countries. So to end, I'd just like to lay these questions again on the table. We'll see how they play out, and we'll probably be discussing them in next week's show and afterwards. But again, what is Turkey's involvement and their agenda? We know that Turkey is very hostile to Israel. They've said some dreadful, threatening, and terribly disgusting things, very undiplomatic, let me put it that way, to and about Israel and about Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. So what is happening there? By the way, there is, I think it was by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there was some prediction that when Damascus falls, the Messiah is not far away. And wow, let's hope that that's true. It's very, very interesting. So just going back to more present day political things, how is this now going to affect Iran? Certainly it weakens Iran. What's with the chemical weapons? Where do the Druze fit in? The Kurds fit in? But that's it. A lot happening here in the Mideast, and we shall see what unfolds. And I want to thank you all for listening. For listening. For listening. For listening. For listening. For listening.